Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So today I got a fun and exciting episode for you guys this evening as we're going to be taking a look at Satalleview Plus, which is basically a recreation of the original Satelleview service for the Super Famicom in Japan. If you weren't aware, there was an adapter that went on the bottom of your Super Famicom that would give you access to satellite services and be able to download magazines and other new games from Satelleview, St. Giga, and Nintendo. Nothing that came over to the United States, but it has been shut off for a very long time. I think 2002 was the end date for it. But a team of modders have basically recreated the Satelleview servers within a software emulator, so now within certain set periods of time you can actually connect to a classic server, download games, and go through the broadcast schedule. And this is basically doing exactly what Satelleview would have done back in the day, because right now it is not in beta. It seems to be going back live on August 1st. So I will leave a link in the description below, but basically it's a revival of St. Giga's satellite service with all of the different games that would have been on there, including the broadcast hours. And if you take a look at the beta week when they first rolled this out in July, they actually have different games that will be broadcast at different times. So this is not something where you're just going to sit down and play every single Satelleview game you've ever wanted to play at once. This is basically recreating the feel and vibe of having a Satelleview in Japan in the 90s and early 2000s, where you actually had to play and download the games around a broadcast schedule from a satellite. Obviously the satellite isn't actually going to be orbiting Earth these days. It's going to be a simple server, but it's basically taking the concept of what Satelleview was and recreating it for a modern audience. So right now I'm just wandering around this random town with nothing really being open, but you'll see here we do have the option in the house to load stored data, so you can add BSX files and play around with this until the servers come back live. This is not something I expected to see happen whatsoever, but I'm so impressed with the effort of bringing this back to the masses, because we never got Satelleview in the United States, and even today, if you have the hardware, it's not like there's any broadcast going on with the satellite. And there's a ton of different fun games like this Jet Bike Chrono Trigger minigame right here that would come down at different broadcast times. Stuff that are basically pivots on the original game. There's so many classic titles here recreated in a new or weird way, and having a bike speeder race in Chrono Trigger on the Satelleview is just a fun time. It certainly isn't the easiest game in the world, but this is the stuff that would come down with the Satelleview, and I will definitely show you some of the Zelda stuff in just a moment, because those are probably the most famous games on the service, where you'd get pieces of a map and a time limit, and you'd have to basically play across 4 different weeks when the games are broadcast. Basically think like network TV, except you're not watching a show, you're waiting for the time slot to be able to play the next chunk of a game. It was a great and wild concept back in the day, and being able to re-enjoy that again is going to be so much fun. And if you can't tell already, this overworld map town here definitely has some big Earthbound vibes, and the name of the town is The Town Whose Name Was Stolen. Sounds like a spaghetti western starring Clint Eastwood, and not a map for a satellite service in a Japanese gaming scape, but honestly I do love that. And as you walk around, once this goes back into beta and that launch happens again with the servers being live, all of these stores will open up. I found out about this maybe 3 or 4 days ago, and I figured I would make a video about it because I was so entertained by the idea of somebody recreating the functionality of Satelleview and being able to bring it to you at a certain set time, because in today's gaming age you can basically play any game you want anytime you want. So there's something interesting to be said for actually having restrictions on when you can enjoy something, kind of building it around your schedule. And as far as installing this, it is absolutely easy. All you need to do is grab the emulator with the BSX files as well as the Satelleview Plus client, and read this little bit of direction down here as to where to put those 2 files, so when the servers are back up and running at their certain set times, you'll be able to use everything you want to use. And that again is just really fun. This is the type of thing you don't expect to happen, but ends up just popping across your radar, and you realize there's fans out there trying to make sure that there's nothing on the Super Nintendo front that you miss out on gaming wise, even if you can play most of the Satelleview games without actually having any active server. This is just awesome. And I will tell you, the town map as well has incredible music. Listen for 45 seconds and I'll show you some games. Definitely a sign that can get stuck in your head. Now we're taking a look at BS, The Legend of Zelda, and these are basically pivots on the original Zelda concept, but Nintendo and St. Giga would change a lot of different things around. Obviously, this is never anything you've seen in a mainline Zelda game here. These actual clips with the text underneath it, and these have been translated into English as well, so I'm just kind of playing around here to give you an example of what you're going to find when Satalleview Plus goes back live, and that is the fun thing. These games are going to be recognizable, but they're also going to feel foreign at the same time. And if you've never played any of the Satalleview games before, there is a lot to love here, and the library is surprisingly large because the service did run for a decent amount of time in Japan. I know that these aren't something that are going to rival the original games they're based off of, but there's going to be a lot of fun here. And if you're a fan of a franchise, you might not know that there is a Satelleview version of that game on the service, so definitely look at a list of Satelleview games. You might be surprised to see what you see there. But again, there's so many different ways you can play these titles. Some things were timed and only released for a few days. And you can see here, you can pop back into your house in the town square and load up a game. There's so many different weird titles that maybe you've never heard of before. Something like Dzaman BSX, which is taking a shmup and turning it into a new shmup based upon the fact that this actually uses satellite services. You are flying around as the St. Giga satellite, attacking different enemies and picking up different power-ups that are the icons and buttons from the Super Nintendo and its controller. This kind of feels like a parodious game in a little bit of a way, and it does really work, and it's the type of thing that most people probably didn't realize actually ever existed. And this is the type of thing that's going to come up onto the broadcast schedule for Satalleview Plus when it is back online. So you're going to be able to actually schedule a time and figure out when this game is being broadcast, add it to your Satelleview service on the emulator, and play it like you would over 2 decades ago. And that's the fun thing, because most of you didn't grow up in Japan, and some of you weren't alive when this hardware was actually being sold. So for a lot of us, we're going to be able to experience Satelleview like it was originally intended for the first time. And I love this even takes the town square concept from the actual first portion of the video I showed you and adds in enemies in the shmup, because we haven't gotten to that point in the map yet, but there is a large monument to the north of the map. This is just super creative, and I love what it's doing. It's basically just giving you these small bite-sized games to download via a satellite service back in the day, and now modders have figured out how to bring it to everybody. Do be aware that right now it only works via emulation, but they are planning, according to the website, to bring this to original hardware at some point in time. And imagine actually getting a Satelleview for your Super Nintendo, plugging it in the bottom and figuring out a way to wire it up so it can connect to a server online. It feels both completely needless and absolutely essential at the same time, and I love this version of Super Mario Bros. 2. You're going to get different characters popping up in the corners of the screen. Again, it's the game that you probably played at least a dozen times, but in a slightly new way, and it is just a fun curiosity to check these things out. But you're going to see right here, it's been a while since I played this version of the game. I absolutely just duffed this jump and fall to my death, although I feel like I should have landed on that log. Or you have stuff like Darius Force here, another shmup that would have been broadcast over the Satelleview service, and it also has an incredible soundtrack. 25 seconds and I'll be right back and tell you more. Absolutely awesome music, and we're back in the overworld here. So basically how this is going to work is in the future, you're going to be able to go to the website link below, and you're going to get a schedule of broadcasts. You're going to get a date and a time, and then with the Satelleview Plus client, you're going to be able to connect to an online server and treat this like it's actually talking to a satellite in space over 2 decades ago. So you're going to have to look at your calendar, decide, do I want to play the games that are broadcast tonight? Do I want to be home? Or do I want to wait around for the next time they might be broadcast? Just like you had to do back when this service was live. And outside of that little mole in the ground, pretty much everything else I've covered. So definitely check this out in the future when it starts to broadcast, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.